Hey everybody, Dave here, and what I wanted to talk to you about today, and I'm going to try and keep this as short as possible, is an application called PCG Tools. It's a fantastic application, and it has a whole bunch of different uses, but I wanted to show you one of the primary uses that I use it for. So let's say you've got your Kronos, you're a gigging musician, you've got your Kronos set up in such a way that you need everything to stay where it is, but there's some new sounds that you've just purchased and you want those sounds to integrate with your existing setup. You can't necessarily just load the sound because you could overwrite some of the things that you've got already. Well, before I show you how to use the tool, I wanted to talk about just briefly how this relationship exists between programs and combis. So I'm not going to take long to do that, but there's a little bit of an explanation to help the conceptual part. If you understand that part already, then feel free to skip forward in the video and you'll be able to just jump right into how to use PCG tools. So this is the premise, and I don't know how easy this is to see. This is the premise. So you have two types of programs. So if we think of this as kind of the program layer, you have two types of programs. You have EXI programs, which are sounds that are generated from within the Kronos. I mean, they're all generated within the Kronos, but what I mean is that they're generated using, let's say, an oscillator that is mathematically derived as opposed to sample playback, which is where we have the HD1 engine. So anything that uses samples, or that triggers samples, with the exception of like the Berlin Grand, but you can't really control that as much. If it's going to use samples, it's going to be the HD1 engine. If it's going to generate the sounds, like an oscillator is actually mathematically generating a waveform, then it's going to be an EXI. So that includes things like your Poly 6, your MS-20, Mini, and that sort of thing. So those are the two types of like program banks that exist. So here we've got, I'm just going to use us as an example, user AA bank with a bunch of sounds, and user FF bank with a bunch of sounds. Now by default, I want to say it's like user like UU, I think it's like C, D, and E are all EXIs, where FF and GG, rather it's C, C, D, D, and EE are all this. And actually A and B, I think B is dedicated to drums, and AA and BB are drums, and anyway, so, but FF and GG by default are also going to be used for the HD1 engine. So I want you to be aware of that, because when we copy and paste and move sounds around, it doesn't blend. You can't take some sounds that are made on the HD1 engine and put them into an EXI style bank. It's either one bank type or another bank type. You can't mix and match. So that's something that you want to be aware of. So let's say I've got a combi. So I've got a combi here, and this combi has a bunch of timbres. Those are those tracks. So this combi, and this also works with song mode as well. Let's say timbre 1 points to user AA 000. Timbre 2 points to user AA 003, and then timbre 3 points to 006. Those are all EXI bank types. Then we've got timbre 4, which is referencing user FF 000. Well, here's the thing. When it comes to moving sounds around, if we were to take this sound list, this combi doesn't care what sounds are in here, it's just pointing to the location, right? So this sound could be a piano, but if I were to change that to an organ sound and I move that piano sound down to 001, let's say, the combi doesn't know any better. It still points to 000. And this is the problem that exists when it comes to loading PCG files. Because what can happen is you'll load a PCG and you'll change the whole structure of what's laid out here, but a combi's still pointing to the old location, so the sounds are going to be completely wrong. Well, then the question is how do you fix it? Or how do you make it consistent? Well, that's what I wanted to talk about with PCG Tools. So you'll notice that I've got PCG Tools running. This is, again, a brilliant program written by somebody named Michael Kaisers. I think that's how you say the name. Anyway, Michael, thank you for doing this, because this has made my life vastly easier, and I wanted to show you just some of the basics. So first things first, you need to make a backup of your Kronos. So you don't necessarily need to manipulate the KSC files, which are all your sample data. You don't necessarily need to manage that as much. This is more for just the PCG side, which is going to contain things like combis, programs. It's going to contain drum data, like things like that. So first things first, let's say you've done your Kronos backup already, and I already have. I've got an old backup that I'm using. I've got a more current one, but just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to hit the open button. So I'm going to hit open, and I'm going to choose this LD main PCG. So this is one of my backups that I've made. And so you can see it's a complete backup. So under programs, I can see all of the programs, and you'll notice it shows the synthesis type. So you can see EX1, HD1. It's basically showing you what engines are being used to generate the sound. So in this case, not necessarily the engine per se, but the bank type. So you'll notice user CC, DD, and EE are all EXIs. So those are ones that are being generated from within the Kronos, where BB, AA, FF, GG, those are all HD1 specific. So that's just an example. Okay, I've also got my combis, I've got set lists, I've got wave sequences, drum kits, drum patterns, and then I can see a little bit of everything. So first things first, here's the process of how this works. We need to open up the patch or the PCG file that contains the new stuff. Okay, so I've already got my backup open, and we're going to leave that backup where it is. But now I'm going to hit open, and I'm going to open up well, in this case, it's a PCG that contains a song called I Think I'm Alone Now. So it's got the combi as well as the programs. So one of the things that this application does that is absolutely brilliant is it will retain the links between programs and combis. So for example, if I were to go to combi and I see this combi here, this particular combi, when you click show, you can show the timbres that it's using, and it shows what the name of it is and its location. So right now it shows the program ID, where it's located, that sort of thing. So first things first, I've tried moving combis first and then moving the programs, and that very well may work, but I'm not it could be successful. I just haven't tried it. My flow has always been move the programs first and move the combi second. So, I mean, you can try it the other way if you'd like, but let me show you this process. So just as a quick review, okay, I've opened PCG Tools. I'm going to open my backup. So my backup is now open, and I've got a whole PCG backup of all of the sounds. I'm going to open up the thing that I want to integrate. So now I've got my integrated set list, okay? So first things first, I'm in program mode for both of them. Notice EXI. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy these 4 sounds, and I just held shift when I did that. If you hold control, you can choose specific ones. Holding shift allows you to select a range. So I'm going to select a whole bunch of these ones right up to the point that I'm using all of the sounds that I need. And I'm going to hit copy. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste it into a bank in my backup. And when I say my backup, I mean we're not doing this on the Kronos right now. This isn't live. This is in a backup file. So the whole point is that once I've created the backup file the way I want, I can load that backup file into the Kronos, and then the Kronos will have all of the new sounds with the references intact. So that being said, notice here that this is an EXI. That means I need to paste it into my backup into an EXI bank. So let me give you an example of what happens when you try to do something wrong. So if I want to put this in my, let's say the FF bank, notice it's an HD1 bank. Well, I'm going to put it here, but I don't get the option to paste it. It's not even an option. I can't force it to do something it's not capable of doing. So I'm going to put it into, let's say user DD. So user DD is an EXI style bank. I'm going to choose the location, and notice now I have the option to paste. So I'm going to hit the paste button, and it pastes those sounds in. So as far as the backup is concerned, as of right now, this is temporary. I haven't saved anything yet, and it's definitely not gotten as far as the Kronos yet. So far, we've got that. Now that I've got the EXI bank saved, I have to go to the HD1 bank and do the same thing. So I'm going to move these sounds. I'm going to copy them. I'm going to go into my backup file, find an HD bank, and I'm going to paste it here. So far, so good. It seems fairly simple, right? And again, as a review, I found my EXI bank, I've taken the sounds, I've moved them over, I found my HD1 bank, took my sounds, moved them over, and keep in mind, I'm taking them out of the new file where I want sounds to come from and put it into my backup. So now I'm going to go to Combi. I'm going to select my combis. So I've gone into combi mode. I've selected my combis. I'm going to hit copy. Now what I'm going to do is in my backup, I'm going to go to combi mode as well. I'm going to go to an appropriate bank. Let's say this one, my user D bank. And I'm going to paste them in here. Now you'll notice they're pasted in. So far, so good. It seems to be there. Now, how can we verify that things have stayed the way they're supposed to? Well, we've selected a combi. We can select the button that says Show Timbres. And when we show the timbres, notice it actually has updated the program ID location. So instead of pointing to FF000 and DD000, which is actually, it used to be EE000, instead of pointing there, it's actually updated. So I can verify with every single one of these that they have indeed updated the location. So far, I hope this is making sense. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to save our backup PCG file. So what I can do is I can simply go File, Save. Now what this has done is this has updated my LD is the name of my band. It's Loaded Dice, one of my bands. So we've updated the backup file from my Kronos to include all of the new programs and combis. Now, if there were drum kits in here, you're going to have to do that too, and that's actually something that I failed to do before I made my backup. So I'm going to take this user-made drum kit, and I'm going to copy it as well. I'm going to go to my backup and under drum kits, I'm going to find a user bank, and I'm going to paste it in here as well. There. So now that I've done that, I can hit save again. Also, you can simply hit the save button. That works just fine. So at this point, here's how I'm going to verify this actually works. Well, at this point, I would load it into my Kronos. But first, I'm simply going to close all of it. I'm going to hit File, Open. I'm going to choose my LD main, which is the one that we were using previously. And I'm going to go to the different banks. And if I scroll down, I can see I think I'm alone now. Okay, so I can see that the sounds seem to be there. And when I go into combi mode, there, I think I'm alone now. I'll show the timbres. I can see that they're there. So that seems to be okay. And then drum kits, if I go here, I can find that my hand clap drum is there too. So at this point, now what I would do is I would take the PCG file off of my computer. I would move it to a USB stick. I would get it to my Kronos somehow. For me, I have an Ethernet connection set up. I plugged an Ethernet cable right into the motherboard of the Kronos, so I just put everything through a router. It's a lot faster that way. But however you can, get the PCG file to your Kronos, and what will happen this time is when you load the files, it'll actually load, it'll basically rewrite your old backup that's on your Kronos, and it will hopefully everything will stay exactly the same, and it will also include the new files that we've just moved over. But I hope this video was helpful, and please feel free to ask me any questions. If you have any, I'll try and help the best I can. Thanks.